Welcome to KidLogic Labs. I'm Leanne and you're in the Parenting Lab. If you've ever had your child completely unravel over something small, like the wrong cup, a sibling looking at them the wrong way, or being told it's time to turn off a screen, you are not alone, my friend. Maybe they slam a door, maybe they yell, maybe they say something shocking like, "I hate you." And you're standing there thinking, this is way too big for what just happened. This is more common than you think, and it doesn't mean you're raising an angry child. It means your child has a nervous system. I have 4 girls, and even my big kids still have moments where their anger goes from 0 to 100 in seconds. Because what looks like disrespect is usually something else. Sometimes that something else looks like slamming doors. Sometimes it looks like yelling. And sometimes it looks like an entire bowl of cereal getting thrown across the kitchen. Let's talk about what's actually happening. What's really happening here is a stress response. When your child feels frustrated, embarrassed, powerless, overstimulated, or misunderstood, the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, activates. The amygdala doesn't think, it reacts. Its job is survival. So it sends signals that increase heart rate, tighten muscles, speed up breathing, and release stress hormones like adrenaline. In other words, fight mode. Now here's the important developmental piece. The part of the brain responsible for logic, impulse control, planning, and emotional regulation is the prefrontal cortex. And children don't have a fully developed one yet. In fact, the prefrontal cortex continues developing all the way into our mid-20s. So when we say things like, calm down, use your words, why would you do that? We're asking a brain that's still under construction to access skills that are not fully built yet, especially in moments of stress. And when the alarm system's activated, the thinking brain goes even more offline. That's not disrespect, that's neurobiology. And I've seen this play out in my own house in some pretty dramatic ways. One time, one of my girls got really angry with another one, and instead of using her words, she grabbed the bowl of cereal from off the table and threw it at her. Milk, cereal, everywhere, on the table, on the floor, on her sister, in my hair, in her hair, in the cracks, in the grout on the tile. I don't know, it's just complete chaos. It was ridiculous. Now, in that moment, it would be easy to think, why would you do that? But when a child's nervous system's in fight mode, they're not exactly making strategic decisions. Their brain's reacting faster than their thinking skills can catch up. That's what a developing nervous system looks like. And there's another important layer here. Anger is often a secondary emotion. Underneath anger is usually something more vulnerable: disappointment, embarrassment, hurt, fatigue, feeling powerless. But anger feels stronger, more protective, so the nervous system chooses that. This is why helping children recognize their feelings is so important, because anger doesn't always look the way we expect it to. A lot of us grow up thinking anger looks like yelling or slamming doors or someone obviously losing their temper, but anger can show up in quieter ways too. Sometimes it shows up as irritability, sometimes withdrawal, sometimes even as tears, and even adults struggle to recognize it. I remember learning about this myself in my early 20s. At the time, I was working 60-plus hour weeks with a really, really heavy caseload, and one day I came home and my lights wouldn't turn on. I forgot to pay my electric bill. I was so overwhelmed and stressed that I forgot about it for a couple months. So I called my mom, as one does, and I started crying to her on the phone. And in that moment, she said something really simple. She said, "Don't be sad, we'll figure it out." And in that moment, something clicked. I realized I was not sad, I was furious. I had been carrying so much stress that my anger was showing up as tears, and until that moment, I didn't even think I experienced anger. I thought I just got my feelings hurt, or I was sad, because I cry when I'm angry, apparently. So that made me think, if adults struggle to recognize their own anger, imagine how confusing it can be for kids. One of the most powerful things we can do for our children is give them language, helping them say stuff like, "I'm frustrated, that felt really unfair, I'm really mad right now," and being able to recognize their signs in their body is really, really important. because once they can recognize anger or whatever it may be, they have a better chance at figuring out how to manage it. When our child's nervous system escalates, ours often follows. We raise our voice, we demand explanations, we lecture, or we say things that invalidate their feelings, like, "This is ridiculous, you're overreacting," or "Stop acting like that." And while that makes sense from an adult brain, to a child in fight mode, it feels more like a threat. More pressure, more heat. That fire inside grows. Not because they're defiant, but because they're dysregulated. And in that moment, you may inadvertently be adding things to it, like shame or embarrassment. Here's the mindset shift. You cannot discipline a nervous system into regulation. I'm going to say that again. You cannot discipline a nervous system into regulation. You guide it there. First, regulate yourself. Lower your voice down below theirs, slow your movements, get on eye level with them, eye to eye, and calm down yourself. Your nervous system's contagious. Kids borrow our regulation before they learn to create their own. Second, reduce stimulation. Less talking, less explaining, more grounding. If one of my girls storms off or snaps at a sister, I try not to chase the moment with a lecture. Instead, I might say something like, "I can see you're really angry. I'm here when your body feels ready to calm down." Sometimes that's all I say. Because once their breathing slows and their body settles, their thinking brain comes back online. And that's when problem solving becomes possible. That's when we can actually talk about what happened, because they are able to process it better. And eventually, yes, we talked about the cereal incident. Not while milk was dripping off the table, later, when everyone's bodies, including my own, was calm again. That's when we could say, what was going on? What were you feeling when that happened? And what could you do next time that anger starts to build like that? Because teaching skills work best after regulation and not during the explosion. If your child struggles with anger, you're not failing. Let's talk about what to do when your kid doesn't use their skills, because let's be honest, they're not going to remember all the time. I mean, we don't always remember all the time. When your kid's in a big emotional moment, their thinking brain goes offline. So instead of correcting in the moment, our first job is to help them feel safe and calm. And then later, after things have settled, that's when the teaching happens. You're parenting a developing brain, and the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, impulse control, and decision making, isn't fully developed until our mid-20s. So when your 7-year-old melts down or your 10-year-old slams a door, you're not seeing a bad kid. You're seeing a brain under construction. And every time you stay steady when they cannot, you're helping build those skills. You're modeling regulation. You're wiring their future self-control, even on days when milk and cereal end up all in your hair. Those moments aren't parenting failures. They're practice opportunities. Because the goal isn't raising a child who never feels anger. The goal is raising a child who learns what to do with it. If you haven't watched the anger experiment with your kid yet, I recommend watching it together. It gives them language and tools for the moments when they feel super, super angry, and it teaches them how to recognize it. And remember, your child isn't giving you a hard time. They're having a hard time. And with practice, their brain will learn how to handle it. You're not raising a difficult child. You're raising a developing brain. Be gentle with yourself. You're doing great.